This movie review for License to Kill has spoilers. For week 16 of my weekly James Bond movie marathon, the 16th movie of the James Bond franchise is License to Kill. My rating for License to Kill is a 3.5 out of 5, and here's why. License to Kill released in 1989, directed by John Glenn, and this is Timothy Dalton's second and final time playing the role of James Bond. License to Kill also stars Carey Lowell, Robert Davi, Talisa Soto, Wayne Newton, and Benicio del Toro. The movie starts out with James Bond, Felix Leiter, and Felix Leiter friend Sharkey going to Felix Leiter's wedding. As they're making their way to the wedding, they get stopped by the US Coast Guard with 2 DEA agents saying that they have the authority to capture Sanchez, a drug lord. With James Bond not wanting to be left behind, he tags along with Felix Leiter and the agents and tried to capture Sanchez. And then it leads into this really cool action scene between Leiter, Bond, and the DEA agents against Sanchez's men. Sanchez would escape in a small plane, and what they would do next is pretty cool. They would chase the plane in the US Coast Guard helicopter. One of the towing or lifting cables of the helicopter, James Bond would go down in it and land on top of the flying airplane of Sanchez, and he would wrap that tow cable around the tail of the plane, and that helicopter would start to lift it and take it as its own, and thus capturing Sanchez. And then once they captured Sanchez, since they have the parachutes, James and Felix would jump out of the helicopter and parachute into the wedding ceremony. There we get to see one of my favorite lead-ins to the title credit sequence. It's a simple cut, but the music in the background, it's the wedding music, da 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 da, and then it molds into License to Kill, sung by Gladys Knight. And it just cuts right there, and he still it cuts to a lady with a camera, and you still get to see them walking in and whatnot. But yeah, I just found that transition to be really cool. Although the rest of the title credit sequence was not too spectacular, but the song License to Kill is one of my favorite James Bond songs of all time. I did list my top 7 favorite James Bond songs, so you can definitely check that video out after this one. I'll put a link in the description, and the link will be at the end of this video on one of the end cards, so you'll see where License to Kill and the rest of the James Bond songs rank on my list. After the capture of Sanchez, Sanchez will bribe one of the cops interrogating him, Ed Killefer, to help him escape, to which he would go for it and help Sanchez escape. The sad thing is that Sanchez would seek revenge on his capture on Felix Leiter. There they would end up killing his newlywed wife Della, and to interrogate Felix further, they would lower Felix into a pool of sharks with his left leg getting bit off. James Bond would witness the aftermath, and this is a James Bond story that does it a little differently, as this is a revenge story, as he wants to seek revenge on Sanchez for killing Della and hurting Felix. James Bond would disregard Her Majesty's Secret Service in order to get Sanchez. James Bond would link up with the contact that is helping in the investigation of Sanchez, Pam Bouvier. Those two would end up going to the fictional city of Isthmus City, where Sanchez has his base of operations and basically runs the city. What's cool about it is that Bond would have to do certain things in order to get into Sanchez's good graces without Sanchez finding out who he really is. He kind of poses himself as a hitman of sorts. And then James Bond would set little traps to all the persons associated with Sanchez and ended up getting them killed over James. With all that eventually leading James Bond to eventually kill Sanchez. That was kind of the quick appendix version, but everything in the middle is really cool. Like Q traveling to Isthmus City to help James out, and definitely with the devices Q gives to James that he really utilizes them. Wayne Newton played this professor of this meditation church or cult, you could say, but this was all a fake meditation thing, as it is a cover for a factory for Sanchez to develop his drugs, as well as to receive donations from various people that would give him donations, as this one part as they're doing kind of like a telethon thing where they're receiving donations. The story of License to Kill is very good. It provided a lot of intricacies into the story without being too confusing, and it was a different movie in comparison to the James Bond movies before it. And it's kind of as if it's like these new Daniel Craig James Bond movies. It has that feel. The action sequences in this movie were really fun and great, especially the final one where they're chasing tankers and Carrie Lowell's character, Pam Bouvier, was flying a small plane over the action scene to help Bond. The action in this wasn't that over the top. In the last action sequence of the movie, there was a moment where this truck does a wheelie, which is over the top and kind of corny, yes, but it was entertaining. It's a movie, suspension of disbelief. But regardless, that last action sequence is really intense. There's a couple shots and moments John Glenn did, how he directed it. It looked so simple, but it made an impact in the moment. It was a really well done action sequence at the end. Yes, it was also interesting seeing a very young Benicio del Toro. His character was pretty wild, but albeit not too much screen time. And then the way Sanchez got drugs over to wherever he's delivering them, he delivers them through gasoline. They are within the gasoline that really can't be detected, and do this method to filter out the cocaine and whatnot. Pretty interesting. I wonder if it's real. It probably is. But yeah, what's interesting about the two Timothy Dalton films, they both dealt with drugs. It was really interesting. Speaking of the two films, my favorite Timothy Dalton James Bond movie is License to Kill. For its story, its action, and of course, the song. Although I wish both title credit sequences could have been better. License to Kill's title credit sequence was mediocre, while the Living Daylights one I did not like at all. License to Kill was not too over the top. There are some corny parts, a love triangle that weirdly just changes like that, but the story and action sequence are really good in this movie. That is my review of License to Kill. Next week for my weekly James Bond movie marathon, it's GoldenEye. We are finally in the 1990s, and we have another new actor playing James Bond with Pierce Brosnan. Make sure to like this video, subscribe to the Spell Go YouTube channel if you haven't. Thank you for watching.